The alien faction, known as the Zarnak, had built their empire on the ashes of countless worlds. A warrior race with a deep-seated belief in their superiority, they had conquered planets across multiple star systems, each victory reinforcing their sense of invincibility. The Zarnak society revolved around militaristic ideals. Strength was revered above all else, and any species that could not defend itself was deemed unworthy of existence. Their expansion was driven by a relentless pursuit of resources and power, with little regard for the lives they trampled along the way. To them, conquest was not just a strategy but a birthright, and the galaxy was theirs to dominate. Earth, a blue-green speck on the edge of their charts, barely registered as a blip in their grand scheme. The Zarnak's interest in Earth was sparked not by its strategic importance but by its abundant natural resources, particularly its water and varied ecosystems, which they saw as valuable commodities to fuel their growing empire. Their previous conquests had been relatively straightforward, often involving the swift subjugation of technologically inferior species. The Zarnak viewed Earth in much the same way, a planet rich in resources but lacking the defenses necessary to protect them. To the Zarnak, Earth appeared to be low-hanging fruit, ripe for the taking. Their intelligence reports painted a picture of a planet inhabited by a species that had only recently achieved space travel, with technology that paled in comparison to the Zarnak's advanced weaponry and starships. The reports emphasized humanity's apparent lack of unified planetary defense systems and their reliance on outdated military strategies. The Zarnak analysts, accustomed to crushing opposition with ease, saw no reason to consider Earth a significant threat. The humans were described as primitive and disorganized, a species that had barely scratched the surface of the technological advancements necessary for true interstellar warfare. This assessment led to a dangerous level of overconfidence among the Zarnak leadership. They saw Earth as a stepping stone, a minor conquest that would require minimal effort and resources. The Zarnak's supreme commander, renowned for his ruthless efficiency, dismissed concerns from a few cautious voices within his ranks. He was confident that the invasion would be swift and decisive, with Earth falling into Zarnak control within days, if not hours. The plan was straightforward: a full-scale assault targeting major cities and military installations, overwhelming Earth's defenses before the humans could mount any meaningful resistance. The invasion plan, meticulously crafted by the Zarnak's top strategists, relied on their tried-and-true methods of shock and awe. The initial wave would involve a barrage of orbital strikes, intended to cripple any potential resistance, and sow chaos among the human population. This would be followed by ground invasions in key locations, where Zarnak troops would quickly secure vital resources and establish control. The Zarnak believed that their superior technology, especially their energy shields, plasma weaponry, and cloaking devices, would render Earth's defenses useless. The Supreme Commander, known for his unyielding confidence, prepared his forces with the assurance of victory already in his mind. The arrogance of the Zarnak leaders was palpable as they finalized their preparations. They viewed humanity not as a worthy adversary but as an inferior species destined to be enslaved or exterminated. To them, Earth was just another conquest, another world to add to their growing list of victories. The Zarnak soldiers, eager for the glory and spoils of war, approached the invasion with a sense of inevitability. They had no doubt that the humans would fall easily, crushed under the might of the Zarnak war machine. This assumption, rooted in centuries of unchallenged dominance, blinded them to the reality that awaited them on Earth, a reality that would soon shatter their confidence and force them to confront the consequences of their hubris. The Zarnak invasion force descended upon Earth with the precision and confidence of a military machine that had never known defeat. As their ships broke through the atmosphere, they expected a smooth landing, perhaps with some resistance but nothing they couldn't handle. However, the moment they touched down, the reality of Earth's unpredictable environment began to hit them. Instead of the clear skies and calm conditions they had anticipated, the invaders were met with violent storms, sudden temperature drops, and intense winds that battered their landing craft. The Zarnak, used to more stable climates on the worlds they had conquered, were unprepared for the sheer ferocity of Earth's weather systems. Their sophisticated equipment, designed for optimal performance under controlled conditions, began to malfunction under the strain. But the weather was only the beginning. As the Zarnak forces moved to establish their ground positions, they encountered another unexpected challenge: Earth's wildlife. The planet's diverse and often deadly fauna presented threats they hadn't accounted for. Large predators like lions and bears attacked Zarnak patrols, while venomous snakes and spiders infiltrated their camps. Even seemingly harmless creatures like insects posed serious problems, spreading diseases that the Zarnak had no immunity against. Plants, too, became a hazard, with poisonous flora causing casualties among the soldiers who unknowingly came into contact with them. The Zarnak, who had dismissed Earth as a tame world, were beginning to realize that the planet itself was an adversary unlike any they had faced before. As the Zarnak struggled to adapt to Earth's hostile environment, humanity wasted no time in mobilizing a defense. The initial shock of the invasion quickly gave way to action as military forces around the world coordinated their response. But it wasn't just the military that rose to the challenge. Civilians, too, took up arms, using whatever they could find to resist the invaders. Human forces, aware of the technological gap between themselves and the Zarnak, turned to guerrilla tactics, making use of the terrain and the environment to their advantage. They struck from the shadows, ambushing Zarnak patrols in dense forests, urban ruins, and mountain passes, where the aliens' advanced weaponry was less effective. Technological improvisation became a key factor in the human resistance. Engineers and scientists repurposed civilian technology for military use, turning drones into surveillance tools and repurposing communication networks to coordinate attacks. Local knowledge of the environment proved invaluable, as humans lured Zarnak forces into traps where they would be overwhelmed by both the terrain and human firepower. Every aspect of Earth's landscape, from its dense jungles to its sprawling deserts, was turned into a battlefield where the invaders found themselves constantly on the defensive. The Zarnak, who had expected to easily overpower Earth's inhabitants, were now fighting for survival against an enemy that refused to be subdued. As days turned into weeks, the Zarnak High Command began to receive troubling reports from the front lines. What had been envisioned as a swift and decisive campaign was quickly turning into a quagmire. Zarnak forces were suffering unexpected losses, not just from human resistance but from the planet itself. Entire battalions were wiped out by natural disasters, ambushes, and disease. The weather, which the Zarnak had assumed would be a minor inconvenience, continued to wreak havoc on their operations. Communication lines were constantly disrupted, supply chains were in disarray, and morale among the troops was plummeting. The realization began to dawn on the Zarnak commanders that Earth was not the easy target they had assumed. Every day brought new challenges, and every challenge was met with a level of resistance that they had not anticipated. The invaders, once confident in their superiority, were now faced with the grim reality that they had underestimated both the planet and its inhabitants. The initial arrogance that had driven them to invade was being replaced by a growing sense of dread. Earth was proving to be a battlefield like no other, and the Zarnak were beginning to understand that their invasion might not end in the victory they had so confidently predicted. As the days of the invasion dragged on, the Zarnak forces found themselves battling more than just human resistance. They were up against a planet that seemed intent on their destruction. Earth's natural disasters began to strike with a frequency and intensity that the invaders were wholly unprepared for. Hurricanes, with winds powerful enough to rip apart their landing craft, tore through their encampments. Earthquakes split the ground beneath their feet, swallowing entire battalions into the earth. Volcanic eruptions spewed molten lava and ash into the skies, turning the very air they breathed into a toxic miasma. These events, unpredictable and devastating, wreaked havoc on the Zarnak forces. Their technology, so advanced yet so ill-suited to Earth's volatile environment, began to fail them. Equipment malfunctioned, communication lines were severed, and the once organized invasion descended into chaos. The Zarnak had underestimated Earth's capacity for destruction. On their home worlds, such environmental extremes were unheard of, and their military doctrines had never accounted for the possibility of nature itself being a formidable enemy. The losses mounted as the alien forces struggled to adapt. Entire fleets were lost to sudden, catastrophic storms, and ground forces found themselves trapped by landslides or cut off by raging wildfires. The Zarnak, who had prided themselves on their ability to conquer any world, were now seeing their numbers dwindle not from human weapons but from the very elements of the planet they sought to subjugate. Meanwhile, humanity continued to fight back with a ferocity that took full advantage of both the planet's dangers and the invaders' lack of preparedness. Human forces, understanding the unpredictable nature of Earth far better than their alien foes, used the environment to their advantage. They lured Zarnak troops into regions prone to natural disasters, timing their attacks to coincide with impending storms or eruptions. Guerrilla fighters led the invaders into dense forests just as forest fires ignited, or into canyons where flash floods were imminent. In cities, where the Zarnak believed themselves to have the upper hand, humans used their knowledge of the urban landscape to set ambushes in the ruins, striking hard and fast before disappearing into the labyrinth of rubble. Human ingenuity played a crucial role in these tactics. Makeshift drones, crafted from repurposed civilian technology, became tools of reconnaissance and sabotage, feeding false information to the Zarnak or guiding them into traps. Cyber warfare, another human specialty, disrupted alien communications and disabled their technology at critical moments. The Zarnak found themselves fighting an enemy that not only adapted to their every move but seemed to anticipate it, turning their own advanced systems against them. Human resilience, combined with an intimate knowledge of their planet, made every engagement a nightmare for the invaders. Each attempt to regain control ended in failure, as the Zarnak were outmaneuvered time and again by a species they had deemed inferior. As the scale of their losses grew, so did the desperation among the Zarnak commanders. What had begun as a confident campaign of conquest was quickly becoming a desperate struggle for survival. The reality that they were not just facing human resistance but the wrath of an entire planet began to dawn on them. The commanders, who had once boasted of their inevitable victory, now faced the grim task of trying to salvage what remained of their forces. Reports from the front lines spoke of soldiers refusing to advance, paralyzed by fear of the next disaster or ambush. Morale plummeted as the Zarnak troops, once so disciplined and fearless, were reduced to disarray by an enemy they could neither predict nor fully comprehend. The realization that Earth itself was their most formidable foe sent waves of panic through the ranks of the Zarnak leadership. They were fighting on a planet where the very ground beneath them could turn hostile without warning, where the skies could unleash destruction with no pattern or predictability. The planet's environment, combined with human tenacity, created a battleground that the Zarnak were ill-equipped to navigate. As their situation grew increasingly dire, the commanders began to grasp the full extent of their miscalculation. Earth was not just another world to conquer, it was a living, breathing entity, one that seemed intent on rejecting their presence entirely. Their invasion was no longer a campaign of conquest, it was a fight for survival against a world that was determined to make them pay for their arrogance. The Zarnak invaders had been struggling to comprehend the unrelenting challenges that Earth presented, but the true nature of the planet was revealed to them in a way they had not anticipated. During one of their increasingly desperate attempts to intercept human communications, they stumbled upon classified data that had been hidden from them by the Galactic Council. What they discovered left them in stunned silence. Earth was officially classified as a Class 14 Deathworld. This designation, known only to a select few within the Council, was reserved for planets so inherently dangerous that survival was a constant struggle, even for the most advanced species. The Zarnak had thought they were dealing with a standard conquest. Instead, they had unknowingly invaded one of the most perilous planets in the galaxy. The shock among the Zarnak ranks was palpable. They had dismissed Earth as a minor obstacle, a primitive world that would fall easily to their superior technology. Now, faced with the reality of its classification, they realized the magnitude of their error. The signs had been there all along: the extreme weather, the deadly wildlife, the relentless resistance from its inhabitants. But they had arrogantly ignored them, believing their own might to be sufficient. The realization that they were not just battling a hostile species but a planet designed to kill shook the Zarnak commanders to their core. The pride that had driven them to invade Earth was replaced by a growing sense of dread. They had underestimated the planet in every conceivable way, and now they were paying the price. Meanwhile, the The Galactic Council, composed of representatives from various advanced civilizations, had been closely monitoring the situation on Earth. When the news of the Zarnak invasion reached them, the Council members were divided in their reactions. Some felt a grim sense of vindication. This was exactly why Earth's classification had been kept secret for so long. The planet was a test of survival that few could pass, and the Council had always known that revealing its true nature could provoke dangerous ambitions or lead to catastrophic misunderstandings. Others, however, were filled with concern. The disaster unfolding on Earth was a stark reminder of the unpredictable consequences of tampering with a world so hazardous. The Council had intended to protect the galaxy by keeping Earth's nature a secret, but now, that secrecy had backfired in the most disastrous way possible. The Council convened emergency sessions to discuss the escalating crisis, but there was little consensus on how to proceed. Some members argued that the Zarnak deserved their fate. They had acted on their own, without the Council's sanction, and now they were facing the consequences. Others feared that allowing the Zarnak to be annihilated by Earth's dangers could set a dangerous precedent, sparking wider conflicts or emboldening other factions to challenge the Council's authority. The realization that the situation on Earth could spiral out of control, threatening not just the Zarnak but potentially destabilizing the entire region of space, weighed heavily on the Council. The decision to keep Earth's classification a secret had been intended to preserve peace, but now, it seemed to have only sown chaos. For the Zarnak invaders, the revelation of Earth's true nature marked the beginning of the end. The knowledge that they were fighting on a Class 14 death world shattered any remaining hope of victory. What had once been a mission of conquest now became a desperate struggle to survive. The focus of the Zarnak commanders shifted entirely, from winning the war to extracting their remaining forces before it was too late. Every decision, every action, was now driven by the need to escape the planet that had turned their invasion into a nightmare. Their superior technology, once a source of confidence, now felt inadequate against the relentless assault of Earth's environment and its inhabitants. The Zarnak forces, who had arrived on Earth with the intent to dominate, were now in full retreat. They encountered resistance at every turn, not just from human forces but from the planet itself. Their ships, once symbols of their power, struggled to break free from Earth's atmosphere as natural disasters continued to wreak havoc on their operations. The Zarnak, once proud conquerors, were reduced to a scattered, desperate remnant of their former might, trying to salvage what little they could from a mission that had gone horribly wrong. The revelation of Earth's classification as a death world had transformed their entire perspective, forcing them to confront the fact that they were not just outmatched by the humans but by the planet itself. A realization that left them with no choice but to flee or perish. The Zarnak invaders, now fully aware of the deadly nature of the planet they had dared to invade, found themselves trapped in a nightmare from which there was no escape. Their final stand was a chaotic mix of desperation and futility. The invaders, once so confident in their superior technology, now scrambled to survive as both human forces and Earth's unforgiving environment closed in on them. The remaining Zarnak ships, crippled by the relentless onslaught of natural disasters, struggled to launch from the planet's surface. Those that managed to lift off faced a barrage of human counterattacks, their advanced weaponry no match for the coordinated and relentless defense put up by Earth's inhabitants. The planet itself seemed to conspire against them. Hurricanes tore apart landing zones, earthquakes destabilized their makeshift bases, and wildfires swept through their camps. Each attempt to regroup and escape was met with overwhelming resistance, both from the planet and its people. As the Zarnak forces dwindled, their last remnants fought with the desperation of those who knew they were facing total annihilation. The once mighty invaders were reduced to a fraction of their original strength, their numbers decimated by a combination of human ingenuity and the lethal environment. In the end, there were no survivors. The Zarnak ships that hadn't been destroyed in the fighting were consumed by Earth's atmosphere or torn apart by the planet's extreme weather conditions. The final remnants of the Zarnak invasion force were obliterated, leaving nothing but scattered wreckage to mark their ill-fated mission. The invasion, which had begun with such arrogance and confidence, ended in complete and utter defeat. Earth, the planet they had underestimated so profoundly, had proven to be their undoing. The Galactic Council, having observed the catastrophic failure of the Zarnak invasion, convened to address the implications of what had transpired. The Council members, representing various advanced civilizations, understood the gravity of the situation. The disaster on Earth was more than just a failed invasion. It was a stark reminder of the dangers lurking in the galaxy. The Council decided that the time had come to issue a public warning to all species, a declaration that would make clear the risks of underestimating any planet, particularly one like Earth. The message was simple and direct. Earth is a Class 14 death world, a planet so inherently dangerous that even the most advanced and powerful civilizations would be wise to avoid it. The warning was broadcast across the galaxy, reaching every corner of known space. It detailed the fate of the Zarnak, describing how their arrogance had led them to invade a world they had thought to be insignificant, only to be met with total destruction. The Council emphasized that Earth was not just dangerous because of its environment, but because of the resilience and ingenuity of its inhabitants. The message was clear: Earth was not a planet to be trifled with, and those who ignored this warning did so at their own peril. The Council hoped that by making this information public, they could prevent further disasters and maintain stability in the galaxy. In the aftermath of the invasion, the perception of humanity throughout the galaxy underwent a profound transformation. Once seen as a relatively minor species, humans were now regarded with a mix of respect and fear. Other civilizations, some of whom had previously dismissed Earth as inconsequential, began to reconsider their views. The resilience and adaptability that humanity had shown in the face of an overwhelming threat had earned them a new place in the galactic order. Earth, once overlooked and underestimated, was now recognized as a formidable world, its inhabitants capable of defending their home against even the most advanced invaders. The tale of the Zarnak invasion became a cautionary story, passed from one species to another, a reminder of the perils of hubris and the consequences of underestimating those who might appear weaker. Earth, now known as a Class 14 death world, was respected and, in many cases, avoided altogether by those who had heard the tale. The galaxy had learned a valuable lesson. Beneath the surface of even the most unassuming planets could lie dangers that no one could have anticipated. Earth had emerged not just as a survivor, but as a symbol of what could happen when a world was underestimated. Humanity's place in the galaxy was forever altered, and from that day forward, Earth was known as a planet to be respected, feared, and above all, left alone.